So, welcome everybody, welcome in Tilburg in the Netherlands, welcome as well in Paris in France. So today we have a match which is the first match of the day 3 of the ZIEG Inter-University Law Debate Tournament 2022, organized by the Corax Foundation. With my colleague Mr. Banova, we will be hosting this match, which is actually on a topic which has been given 10 days ago to both teams. And as it is the last match, obviously, this is an important match because it is counting for the 8th of final, for the qualification to the 8th of final. So for both teams, it's the second match. Both of them had already a match against, as well, the third team of this group, which is the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Chile. And now, of course, it is their match to finish the group phase. So today I will ask you as well to introduce yourself, and afterwards we'll talk about the topic, and of course we'll give the positions. So maybe I can give the floor already to Mr. Zhang to introduce himself in Tilburg.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Andy Zhang. I'm currently a first-year student in law, global law at Tilburg University, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Great, thank you. Miss Faure.
I'm Delia Faure. I'm currently in third year in a double degree of law and art history at the Sorbonne University.
Thank you very much. Mr. Khosrow. Oh, sorry. Yes, Radmer Khosrow-Kav. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Radmer Khosrow-Khavar, and I'm a first-year student of global law in Tilburg University.
Thank you very much. Miss Masson.
My name is Camille Masson, and I study a double degree in law and art history at the Sorbonne University.
Thank you. And Mr. Fransawi.
Hi, my name is Rami Fransawi. I'm also a first-year global law student at Tilburg University. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you everybody. So today the topic for your match, which was given 10 days ago, is democracy should be part of Youth Kogan's rules. So things that all of you students in law you know from the first year what is Youth Kogan. So of course you will have two positions on this topic, and I will share my screen so everybody can see the positions as well on YouTube. Up, yep, with the algorithm. So voila, so you should see now the wheel spinning with two positions possible per team in favor or against that topic. So you just click now, and then you will know what will be your position for this match. So this is Paris with against the motion for this match. So it is Tilburg will be in favor. So it means Tilburg will start the match, but as well will defend the position that democracy should be part of Youth Kogan's rules, and as a consequence, Paris-Sorbonne will be defending that democracy should not be part of the Youth Kogan's rules. So my colleague will share her screen for the 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, Tilburg will start. Yes, so we start the match. So yes, Miss Breton just connected, but we'll start the match immediately because one of your members as well needs to leave for an exam, so that's why we'll...
Actually, I'm here.
Yes, I know, but we will start the match and then we'll introduce yourself afterwards. Okay?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, sorry. So yes, so it is time to start with the opening statement for 4 minutes by Tilburg University. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to discuss the idea that democracy should be part of Joost Kogen's rule. Today, and due to an array of reasons, my colleagues and I will express our complete support for this proposition. The notion that the idea of democracy should be a part of customary international law to be adopted by all states around the world today is inherently synergic with the goals of the system of Joost Kogen's, as my colleagues and I will prove today. Firstly, we must establish that democracy is about the freedom of choice. Today, we will show how the freedoms of choice that create the basis of democracy are already set in place in various core areas of international law, creating a foundation for democracy to be recognized as a Joost Kogen's norm. The freedom of choice that is at the heart of democracy can be seen in key treaties which form our Joost Kogen's norms today. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Article 19 of the same declaration reads, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. Article 21 of that declaration states everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country, directly or through freely chosen representatives. And the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of the government, and this shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections. Article 22 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, another key document in our international law, states that everyone shall have the right to freedom of association with others, including the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of his interests. Article 4 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights reads, the state may subject such rights only to such limitations as are determined by law, only insofar that this may be compatible with the nature of these rights and solely for the purpose of promoting the general welfare in a democratic society. As can be seen from all of these excerpts taken from key international legal documents, the separate aspects that make up the idea of democracy, such as freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of association, are already present and deeply rooted in documents considered to form the basis of our modern international law. In fact, Article 1 of the UN Charter itself states the purposes of these United Nations are to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of people. Self-determination of people is quite literally the defining principle of democracy, and self-determination is already considered a Joost Kogen's norm by international legal experts. Today, my colleagues will explore the idea that democracy is inherently and objectively a force for good, and it should therefore automatically qualify for classification as a Joost Kogen's norm. Additionally, my colleagues will elaborate on the idea that the already existing universality of democracy in international law by proving that the ideals of democracy already exist in almost all domestic legal systems today. And in essence, if the legal concept of democracy is already present in domestic legal systems, why should it not be superimposed on an international level for its own safeguarding and development? Even in political ideologies, everyone on the political spectrum from Karl Marx to Ronald Reagan advocated for the ideas of democracy. And while they may have had different definitions of the idea, different manifestations of it, the key aspect was there. Democracy is essential for all. Ladies and gentlemen, it is for the aforementioned reasons, as well as the arguments that my colleagues will present today, that we completely support this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move to the opening statement as well by Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have 4 minutes.
Dear members of the jury, the opposite team with my colleague, we stand negative on the resolutions that democracy should be part of Joost Kogen's rules. In 1969, the Vienna Convention defining in its Article 53 Joost Kogen's rules as, I quote, a norm accepted and recognized by the international community of states, as well as a norm from which no derogation is permitted and which can be modified only by a subsequent norm of general international law, having the same character. Moreover, these articles specify treaties are void if they conflict with one of these rules. These norms are the top of the hierarchy of international law. Moreover, the specificity of this norm is that they can be prohibited in a state relation. International law rules normally constitute dispositive law, which means that states can refuse to respect them in their mutual relation by agreements. Yuskogen prohibits this. Inscribing democracy in this rule would mean that the 116 signatories of the Vienna Convention will have to be democracies. Democracy is defined in the Cambridge Dictionary as a system of government based on the belief in freedom and equality between people, in which power is either held by elected representatives or directly by the people themselves. In reality, today, among the 116 states, just a minority are in democracy. So it would involve national modification and sometimes rethinking the entire political and legislative systems to establish the democratic distribution of power. This conversion procedure will lead states to disengage from international treaties and due to this fact reinforce the segmentation of the international community. Indeed, the international feeling is often less strong than the attachment to the national system. Moreover, the national politics of many states are so far from democracy that transforming into a democracy will involve fundamental transformation that some politicians are not ready to concede. States often prefer their national independence to submission to international authority to the detriment of the rule of law. So the lack of a consensus on democracy is one of the reasons that makes it impossible to include democracy among the Yuskogen's rule. In addition to that, imposing democracy on states will attack the sovereignty. That will not leave them the choice of the political regime and would paradoxically constitute a non-democratic rule. Finally, it will require a supranational concept of democracy, and that will need to be imposed on the international community, which again brings into question the democratic nature of this rule. For all these reasons, we definitely think democracy should not be part of Yuskogen's rules. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we move to the first rebuttal. So for the first rebuttal, I would like to give the floor to Tilburg University. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. The proposition wants to react to the opening statement made by my distinguished colleague on the other side. They have mentioned that there is no international recognition by the international community with regards to democracy. However, there is, even though it does not happen explicitly, the absence of evidence is not necessarily the evidence of absence. Most constitutions around the world imply that there is such an idea of people's sovereignty. And this is even seen in non-democratic countries or countries that are quote-unquote undemocratic. For instance, seen in the constitution of North Korea even, which in their official name, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, already has the word democratic in it, which states in their Article 4 that the sovereignty lies in, among other groups, also the working people of the People's Republic or Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, which therefore states that even this idea of democracy is present in non-democratic countries. Most countries in the world, even though they do not practice it, have a recognition of democracy within their legal system. Even that, with regards to the constitution, it is not the only measure stick in seeing whether a country recognizes democracy. We see in other socio-political factors also people in society trying to push towards democracy in countries which governments do not recognize democracy within their constitution. For instance, seen in the social movements that emerged during the Arab Spring, for instance, in the Arab world, which generally speaking is not necessarily a democratic governing country, but we see that within that nation, people strive towards values of democracy, which therefore recognizes that there is such a thing as universal understanding. Not even in the Arab world, we can make this even broader. We can look at movements in Asia or Africa or South America. So to sum up everything that has been stated so far, there is a universal recognition and understanding of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now, first rebuttal as well for Paris 1 Sorbonne, Pantheon-Sorbonne. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, hello. Thank you. And I think the opponent team pretty much stated our point by saying a lot of legal system, states recognize democracy as a principle, yet doesn't make an application of these principles, and it clearly shows the lack of consensus on the democracy in the international community. So, according to Dr. Maurizio Ragazzi, youth against norms should have two components to exist. First of all, the moral content. It explains that these norms have no derogation because these norms are intrinsically moral, like war crimes or torture, and etc. However, what is generally considered as immoral in authoritarian regime is more of their effects, like crimes against humanity or torture. However, these exactions are already covered by youth against norms. Second of all, the youth against norms should have what Ragazzi says as a required degree of support by the international community. However, we're not living in Francis Fukuyama's world anymore. There's no end of history. Economically powerful countries are willing to abandon democracy or even not experiment it. And if you take China into account, which has a GDP of 18,000 billions of dollars, they show the democracy index that is very poor. So there's no opinion on the thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now it is time for the second rebuttal, so I will give the floor back to Tilburg University. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
We believe that democracy is one of the building blocks of international law. The very concept of democracy is enshrined in many landmark treaties. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, for example, projects this concept of democracy by stating the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. Many other covenants and treaties reflect and promote the same principle and core values. What already constitutes jus cogens norms is more or less protected by democracy as well. So it can be concluded that democracy and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms are interdependent and mutually reinforcing, and therefore should both be protected under international law. The Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, adapted in the World Conference on Human Rights, asserted in paragraph 8 of section 1, the international community should support the strengthening and promoting of democracy, development, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms in the entire world. Though a non-binding instrument, this represents a clear indication of the direction that the development of international law is headed towards. During the years after the Cold War, during the years of the Cold War, it could be argued that the promotion of democracy was motivated by the competition of great powers. This is pointed out by UN Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali in his Agenda for Democratization in 1996. However, the end of Cold War marked a new era for international democracy promotion and cooperation outside the domain of the world powers, which could potentially bring about the elevation of democracy as a jus cogens rule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now, second rebuttal as well for Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, so you said that democracy is a building block of the international law, and that we can agree on that. And yes, it's the will of the people. But the thing is, we have to underline the vagueness of the concept of jus cogens, because we know that jus cogens is a norm that is superior to both customary international law and treaty, but yet it remains really vague. We have a lack of definition because no single authoritative list exists of erga omnes obligations. governance obligations have to be respected by each state for their legal interests. And it's also can only be a jurisprudential creation, as during the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in the 1993. It was a tribunal presided over trials for defendants accused of committing serious violations of international humanitarian law. And so there is a lack of enforcement system. So it only gives a rather narrow power to void treaties, and it does not create procedural remedies. So we can say that jus cogens only serves as a norm of reference for the international judge, and also it could attack the sovereignty of states because international law originally relies on state centrism through state organizations such as the UN. But however, it's legally binding on states because sometimes there is the absence of their consent, because for instance, France did not sign the Convention of Vienna in 1969.
Thank you.
So, oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so now it is time for the conclusion. So it means that we give the floor finally to Tilburg as well for 2 minutes. So this is your time now.
Thank you very much. The proposition wants to react to the arguments made by the counter colleague on the other side. They have mentioned the issue or the example of China and how their economic success implies that there is such a thing as a happy people. However, economic success isn't necessarily the best measure stick of what constitutes a happy people. We see that China has an infamous record with regards to human rights violations, and we see, and we are of the opinion that human rights and democracy are engaging in this mutual relationship, which is indispensable. Democracy and human rights, they are connected with each other. Renowned philosopher Jürgen Habermas has formulated that democracy is necessary for human rights to be legitimate, and in their formulation is also required that democracy is part of that. We see, for instance, that minority rights, which are currently raised by my counter colleague on the other side, are being violated in China, which cannot happen if there is a democratic system which enables minorities to voice their opinions and therefore enable them to promulgate law which protect their interests, which is currently not happening in China right now. Furthermore, with regards to legitimacy, we see that there are laws passed in China which are not in the consent of the people right there. So we see that there is, in that sense, also a conflict in that interest. To sum up everything that has been stated so far by our side of the debate, we are of the opinion that democracy is a fundamental part of international law and international principles, and which therefore is a building block. And the building block should be implemented under jus cogens rules. Furthermore, we are of the opinion that there is a universal recognition and understanding of democracy in all nations of the world, which also triggers the criteria of opinio juris for jus cogens to be implemented. I hope that the jury agrees with this conclusion, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now it is time as well for the conclusion for the team from Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So, well, yes, the opponent team, well, stated that many legal systems, well, recognize democracy. We still stand on the point that there's no consensus, real consensus on these ideas, that the measure of making democracy a jus cogens norm is idealistic and does not represent the situation of global economic powers, like for example China. The opponent's team also stated that jus cogens norms indicated a direction, but regarding the vagueness of these jus cogens norms, we can be sure that these norms will not enforce democracy in China and will not make will not better the state of democracy in China and of human rights in general. So we'll stand on the point that it would not be effective in any way to enforce this idea of democracy, which is not universally acknowledged. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is the end of this debate. So from now you are not under evaluation, and of course we can relax a little bit and get your feedback, your impression after that last match of the group phase for your group. You are in the group D. So of course I will start giving the floor to Miss Breton so she can introduce herself and as well give her own impression.
Yes, hello. So I'm Marianne Breton. I'm a first-year student at the University of Pantheon-Sorbonne, and I'm a law and history of art student actually, and pleased to meet you.
Thank you. So what did you think about the match itself?
Well, actually, it was pretty interesting. I think there was this clash between theoretical and moral principle versus more practical and political statements. So it was pretty intellectually exciting, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zhang, what was your impression?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, it was a very exciting debate. I heard arguments. I think that the big issue in this debate was is there a universal understanding of democracy, and is that recognized by the international community? And yeah, that's a very scholarly debate that probably has lots of discussions in scholarly works. So yeah, excited to read more about it, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then Miss Faure.
Yeah, as law students, it was very interesting to work on a juridic subject. Yeah, very interested, and thank you, the other team, for their argument.
Thank you very much. Miss Khosrokar.
Well, it was a great opportunity for me to read a bit more into this topic, and I enjoyed this debate. I heard a lot of interesting arguments, and I just would like to thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you. Miss Masson.
Well, thank you everyone for this debate, and I never really studied international law before, so I think it was really interesting to do the research, and I think each team had really good points. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Fransaoui.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't much left to say. I basically agree with what everyone said. I think it was pretty interesting how we took it also into political and social aspects, not just talking about the legal aspect of it itself, but it was an interesting debate, yeah.
Thank you very much. So yes, so that was the last match for your group D. You are in the group D with the team from Santiago de Chile. So it means in a few days, and we can tell you that we discussed as well, we informed the judge that indeed the assessment should come as soon as possible. Then we can of course give the final ranking of the group, meaning that the two best teams would go then to the eighth final, and as well, depending on your position, first or second, or then you will know, who is your opponent as well for the eighth finals. So what we can tell as well is that we are having the last two matches of this day free, today, tomorrow, and on Monday. So it means early next week we hope to indeed publish and then inform the teams themselves. A few other information is that this will be the end of the group phase. So it means that for the team, for example, who will not qualify among the two best teams, will of course issue certificates of participation, obviously, and of course to for all the teams, as soon as you participate to at least one match, you can get a certificate that you can make use for applications or for as well you can include in your CV that you participated to the competition. So it's just for you to know that indeed we have this. We are preparing as well some other activities that we'll disclose more by email. But first of all, thank you very much. It was a great debate. As you can imagine, this topic is indeed very much legal, let's say. I mean, so it means all law students could, of course, debate on this when you study international law. And yes, so you will get the results very soon. And maybe I would like to give the floor to Ms. Urbanova, who could give some more.
Thank you very much, and thank you to both teams for your preparation and execution of your arguments. I won't keep you much longer. It really was an interesting debate to listen to, and it was an interesting mesh of different aspects that will be very useful to you as you go onto your professional careers. Perhaps to follow up on this, if you found the topic interesting, or you would like to publish an article, The Hague International is soon closing the second call for the quarterly publication. The first publication was already published, and the second call deals with various aspects of law. Should your article be selected, you may go on to directly to the quarterly publication or to the blog publication. And of course, our editorial team will walk you through the publishing process and if there are any changes necessary to be made to the articles. So don't hesitate to send in your submissions if you are interested in pursuing this topic further, or perhaps even on other aspects of law. And very much looking forward to the results of the match and your future matches and progress.
Yes. So thank you again, and you will hear next week more about us by email, obviously with the forms, with the comments, and of course the result for this group, the final results. Yes. Thank you again, and have a good weekend, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.